Hi there, Schism here. Got a 2,500 point battle report. My Dark Elves versus Ogre Kingdoms. Taking the Dark Elves out for the fourth spin in a row. Starting to get the feel and the flavor of the army here, so here I go. Let's dive right into this. Starting off my opponent's far right, he has 4 Lead Belchers. To the left of that, he has 9 Iron Guts. And in that unit, he has a Bruiser BSB, rocking the Armored Silver Steel Great Weapon and a Luck Stone. To the left of that unit, there is 9 more Iron Guts with a Tyrant in there. He's rocking an Iron Fist, Ogre Blade, and Armor of Destiny. So that's some pretty meaty units there. That's a lot of Great Weapon Ogres. That's a lot of Boo-Boos, Ow-Ows, and brutal beatdowns. The Tyrant's unit there is also rocking the Standard of Discipline. Behind that unit, there is 9 Bulls, and in that unit is his level 4 Slowdown Master. He's rocking a Talisman of Endurance and Dispel Scroll. For his spells, he rolled up Toothcracker, Spine Marrow, Bone Crusher, and Bull Gorger. So the usual Ogre madness, a lot of short-range buffs, and one 2d6 Strength Tickles magic missile, which I'm not too concerned about. However, speaking of concerns, there is an Iron Blaster next to the Iron Guts there, and to the left of that, rounding out his forces, there is 4 more Lead Belchers. So starting on my far left, I have a Master riding a Dark Pegasus. He's rocking a Halberd, Heavy Armor, Sea Dragon Cloak, Dragon Helm, Luckstone, Crown of Command. To the right of that unit, there is 12 Crossbowmen, and that unit is a level 4 with a Dispel Scroll. She rolled up Miasma, Enfeebling Foe, Pit of Shades, and Mind Razor. Pretty good spell set here. I got one of the remains in plays. I got Pit of Shades, which is always fun against ogres, and a Mind Razor makes Corsairs nice and killy. Now this unit with my general, my level 4, is off to the side here because most of these spells I can buff the range on them, and also I don't want my unit anywhere near the center of the board because that's where his meat and potatoes are. And if there's anything I learned from facing ogres over and over and over again, is that if they want to traverse the board with any haste, they definitely can with a movement 6 and a 12-inch march. So I really don't want any kind of lucky charges or long bomb charges or any sorts of fast movement to get right in their face. So I'd rather have my caster off to the side, especially since you can buffer spells and increase your range. And I got a couple hexes there too, so I should always have something to cast. And if not, I'll just put the dice into my Doomfire Warlocks there. Which, speaking of them, they're right in front of my 12 Crossbowmen. To the right of those Doomfire Warlocks, there is a Hydra. To the right of the Hydra, there is 40 Corsairs with a Standard of Discipline. To the right of that unit, there is 40 Executioners with a BSB, Heavy Armor, Sea Dragon Cloak, and a Shield. To the right of that unit, there is a Bolt Thrower. To the right of the Bolt Thrower, there is a Master riding a Dark Pegasus. He's got a Charmed Shield, Heavy Armor, Sea Dragon Cloak, Sword of Might, and a Dawnstone. To the right of that unit, conveniently behind, snuggled to this building, there is a Hydra. And to the right of that, there is 5 Doomfire Warlocks. So I win turn 1, and I take my Pegmaster to fly all the way up the side here, unhindered by anything. My level 4 goes into the building here to hang out with her crossbowman chum. I'll give her a nice line of sight to any of my units, or a nice range. I'll be able to target any spells I want from the building, and it's not anywhere near any of his giant units. If the Lead Belchers want to go in and shoot at him, they feel free to. I'll have 12 bodies to absorb any wounds before I start taking them on my sorceress. And in the center here, well, I should say my Doomfire Warlocks move up the side to move up against the Lead Belchers. I think they're more of a threat, so I'm assuming the Lead Belcher shots will go into the Doomfire Warlocks, because once they get behind, they're going to be a lot harder to deal with. My Hydra moves up because, hell, why not? At this point, I like to keep them with my Corsairs generally, but with a cannon in front, it's probably going to eat a cannonball, so I'd rather get this thing into combat as soon as possible. The sooner it's in combat, the less I have to worry about cannonballs. So it's pretty much all or nothing for the Hydra. It's going to try, even if I just get it in the flank of the Iron Guts and do some wounds, it needs to find a purpose in this match. I want it to get some of its points back instead of just getting a cannonball in the tummy and having it roll over. So the center of my lines move up a little bit just to stay a little bit up with the Hydra there. My other Hydra climbs over the wall. My Doomfire Warlocks make it all the way to the side there with their Vanguard move plus their turn 1 movement. On the other side of the woods, so he'll have to go into the woods if he wants to fire at them, and then I'll probably give a flank to the Hydra and the Pegmaster, who's also in the center there. So it's really making a lot of hard decisions for the Lead Belchers on the flank here. They can only shoot at 1 target per turn. Whichever one they target, they'll probably do some damage, but the other 2 will definitely remain intact, which will cause a great amount of problems for him. In the magic phase, I happen to sneak off miasma on these guys, so they have -2 ballistic skill. So effectively they're firing with a blindfold on and a stick up their butt, so I'm pretty sure that they'll be pretty ineffective. In turn 1 for the Ogres now, the Lead Belchers move up to take some shots off at whichever target they deem necessary, and as center line surprisingly inch up. They don't move their full Ogre march up. I think mainly just because of the Executioners, because the Executioners, no matter what you're facing, they're pretty scary as hell. So they kind of trundle forward a bit. His Iron Blaster moves up, and his Lead Belchers climb over the fence there. In the magic phase, he gets off 2 Kraken on his Lead Belchers just because he knows that he's going to absorb either the charge of the Hydra or the Pegmaster if one survives, if not both. And he goes ahead and shoots at the Pegmaster to try to take it off the board. He does a hell of a lot of wounds to it, but I got 3 up rerollable save, and he sneaks 1 wound through, which is not good enough. And the blindfolded stick up the butt Ogres over here shoot at the Doomfire Warlocks and peel one of them off. And the Iron Blaster opens up on the Hydra, shoots one straight into the crotch and bounces down. He hits, he wounds, and he rolls a 1 on the number of wounds he does. So a lucky break here for the Hydra, and with that handy-dandy new rule, rather have regeneration. But he might be able to get that wound back, so you never know. That takes us to Dark Elves turn 2. The Pegmaster flies all the way in the rear here. Now, at this point, I realize that it has one distinct goal. With Crown of Command, I should be able to stand in any fight I get into, and if I can charge his bull unit there in the rear or the side or whatever I can get into, I can lock it into place, and with a short range on his magic, he won't be able to buff his Iron Guts units. So if he wants to stay back there and, you know, try and deal with the Pegmaster, then he's going to pay with his front lines not getting buffed. So I want to try and lock him in place and stop him from being able to buff his main units. So he has a distinct goal in mind at this point. These Doomfire Warlocks move up to get in Doombolt range, just to Doombolt, try and get that Iron Blaster, shred some wounds off it. My Hydra takes the charge into the Lead Belchers there just to get into combat. I don't know how this matchup is. I think it favors me. I can't Thunder Stomp him, but I should get 7 attacks on him, so I should be able to rain down some substantial damage there. Over here, I take my Doomfire Warlocks and I skirt him around his army, just to do whatever. I don't really plan on taking him into a unit of bulls or Iron Guts, really, because I just think that's a futile decision. But my Hydra and my Pegmaster into these Lead Belchers here is a no-brainer. And he can't really flee here because he's too close to the board. And even if he did, he only has 1 shot to rally before he goes off. And if he does try and flee too, it also leaves his flanks exposed to a Hydra and a Pegmaster. And this is just showing the Hydra going to the Lead Belchers once again, just to get away from the barrel of that Iron Blaster. The Iron Blaster, other than the Hydra, doesn't have too many juicy targets. In the magic phase, I go for a Pit of Shades, and I roll 4 or 5 dice on it. I roll pretty high, enough to where he has to pull out his Dispel Scroll, because he doesn't want a Pit of Shades anywhere in the middle of his units there. And then my Bolt Throw goes off and takes 1 wound off of these Iron Guts here. In the combat over here, pretty paltry showing by the Hydra and the Pegmaster. I managed to do 3 wounds in total, 1 by the Pegmaster, 2 by the Hydra, and he does no wounds to me in return, but he sticks around because he has 3 models there, so he's steadfast. That takes us to Ogre's turn 2. Oh, in the Hydra, the combat in the left, I managed to do 2 wounds. With the other Hydra, I did 2 wounds to his his Lead Belchers, and that's it. He did no wounds to me, but he stuck around as well. So that takes us to Ogre's turn 2, and this time he realizes that he needs to get in my face. He's got that Pegmaster all the way on his flank. He doesn't want me pinning him in place, so he goes his full march up to get right into my grill. So it's game time now. He does that scatter shot or burps out a bunch of shrapnel, and he kills 2 more of my Doomfire Warlocks here, but I passed my panic check. In the combat raging on over here, I managed to do 2 wounds with my Peg Captain, 4 wounds with a Hydra this time. He does no wounds to me. He breaks, and I just reform with my Peg Captain. I try and chase him down with my Hydra, but this one Lead Belcher here is pretty fleet of foot, so he's still on the board. In the combat over here, my Hydra rocks the world to these Lead Belchers, takes 4 wounds off them, and he does no wounds to me in return. He breaks from combat, and this is where I could have chased him down, but seeing as the Iron Blaster can freely form and move and face and shoot, I didn't want to try and chase him down because I think that would lead to just more opportunities for him to get my Hydra off the board. So I just reformed my Hydra to face his Iron Blaster to try and charge that down. Now, I don't know what kind of combat that is. I'm pretty sure he's toughness 6, so it'll be an uphill battle for a strength 5 monster. But if I can pin that Iron Blaster in place, I don't have to worry about shooting. If the Lead Belchers rally, well, I can deal with them. They're not really concerned to me. There's only 2 of them. On average, that's 7 shots, a few hits, and maybe a wound here and there. Pretty much peanuts. That takes us to my turn 3. So at this point, I don't really have a choice. Either I charge him or he charges me and gets a whole crap load of impact hits and all that nonsense. So I don't want to do that. So I take my Executioners and I charge into his Iron Guts with his BSB. And I take my Corsairs and I park them right in front of his Tyrant's unit. So I'm 1 inch away, so he has nowhere to go but into me. And that should buy me some time in case I flop this Executioner combat. So I just take my Hydra, I charge it into the side of the Iron Blaster. He doesn't get any impact hits against me. I like that. And I just move up my Doomfire Warlocks to try and Doom Bolt off these last 2 Lead Belchers here. And here, my Hydra charges the last Lead Belcher here, and he goes off the board. My Doomfire Warlocks and my 2 Peg Captains surround this is levels 4 bull unit here in the back. Next turn, I'm going to take my Pegmaster with a Sword of Might into the side and my Pegmaster with the Halberd into the rear. And that way I'll lock him in place and I'll be able to put some attacks onto his level 4 and try and drop him. In the magic phase, I get off Miasma here. I do -2 weapon skill on these Iron Guts here. Now I know they won't have a problem wounding me, but they'll have a hard time hitting me here with a weapon skill 1. And I did do this irresistibly, and I lost 2 wizard levels, so I lost my Miasma and Mind Razor. So not good, but that is a very critical combat, so I'm happy I got the spell off. I need it. I want to preserve as much of those Executioners as I can, because I'm going to need them to chew through at least 1 more Ogre unit before this game's end. So my crossbows open up on the Lead Belchers there. I managed to take 2 wounds off them. And in the combat here, he does 1 wound to my Hydra. I do 2 wounds to the Iron Blaster here, so I consider myself lucky. However, he does pass because his general's nearby, and he does have a reroll still. And he managed to pass his reform as well, so now we're face to face. In the combat here, I haul off first, and I do 16 wounds to these Iron Guts, and he does 7 wounds to me in return. I win this combat handily. He did issue a challenge here with his BSB, and since my BSB is pretty much neutered of any sort of defense, I decline the challenge, send my BSB to the back, and then I just swing freely at his unit. And I win this combat by a monstrous total. I overrun, and I pursue, I should say. When he flees, his BSB drops dead at that point anyways, but I do catch him, and I overrun straight into this unit of bulls here with his level 4. And at the end of my turn, I managed to regain 1 of the wounds on this Hydra, so that's always nice. So that takes us to Ogre's turn 3. He rallies his Lead Belchers here. Manages to get off Toothcracker onto his Iron Guts here, and he plows them straight into my Corsairs. Now my Corsairs, I have realistic dreams and hopes and aspirations and expectations generally in my day-to-day life. So realistically, this is pretty much just a bunch of mealworms to them. So Toothcracker is just adding insult to the injury here. So I don't plan on doing anything here besides just taking a blade of wounds off this unit. And in the combat here, my Hydra surprisingly mops up the Iron Blaster, which is most unexpected, and I just reform to face the rear or the side of the bull unit here. I don't really want to take the Hydra into an Iron Gut unit because that is definitely suicide. So in the combat here, because of the way everything ended up, I couldn't shift over because the other unit there and all kinds of the way I charged, I couldn't reform to face, get my full frontal. So I didn't have a max amount of attacks here, so I managed to do 8 wounds to him. He does 9 wounds to me, but I still end up winning this combat, and he unluckily breaks from combat and just flees right off the board because of the way all my units are stacked up here. He had no room to go, so he just runs right through my Peg Captain, through my Doomfire Warlocks, and out the other side, right off the board. Then the combat over here, the Iron Guts and the Tyrant do what they were meant to do on this Earth in true Ogre fashion. They just completely wall up my Corsair unit. They kill 22 Corsairs. I managed to do an epic 2 wounds back to them. And believe it or not, I'm still steadfast at this point. I passed my steadfast test, but it's all for naught. This is all he has left on the board. My opponent concedes because I was just going to reform my Corsairs and then charge my Corsairs and my Executioners, charge them in, and all my units. I would have put all my magic into Doom Bolts and Pit of Shades and all kinds of horrible, nasty spells if they were able to clean up the Corsairs or anything like that. It just wouldn't end too well for this Iron Gut unit facing off an entire, pretty much almost intact Dark Elf army. So some notes here. Mobility in this army is so amazing. Now I know the core build is not a bunch of Dark Riders and a bunch of blah blah blah, but there still is a lot of mobility in this army, and just being able to take those strong, durable Pegasus heroes to tie up odds and ends left and right of the army is just amazing. Being able to get around, take out war machines, get in the flanks, with stubborn on what I'm holding up a unit, just staying alive, just really giving the opponent a lot of not so easy decisions is amazing in this army. And there's something to be said about having the Corsairs, as crappy as they are still a 40-man brick, and it's a big juicy unit, and people want to take them out, and they're going to be steadfast for a while, except against, a bunch of Iron Guts and a Tyrant. But it's still something that is concerning, and as much as I'd like to have more Dark Riders in this list, and someday I'll probably try it, there's something to be said for the Corsairs. And the Executioners. One thing, a critical, I shouldn't say misplay, but something I notice in this army with when he has all these lead belchers at his disposal, the obvious target is the Executioners. The Executioners definitely need to get whittled down. That unit just proved that it could wall up a whole entire Iron Gut unit pretty much before it even swung, and crippling their efficiency. I think the lead belchers combining their arms against the Executioners, they'll drop like flies. I mean, it's strength 4 armor piercing. I'll get no save against it. And once you dwindle down the efficacy of that unit, I really don't have any other hammer in this unit. So I think the lead belchers, although they were placed on the flanks, and there was so much of my stuff to deal with on the flanks, all those Pegmasters, Hydras, Doomfire Warlocks, it really creates a lot of decisions that you think, those units should be priority. However, they really need to be shooting at the Executioners. But if you don't fire at those flanking units, then they're going to cause all sorts of trouble in your backfield. And yeah, so I definitely think the Executioners definitely should have been crippled early by the lead belches. But there's a lot to be said by all those flanking units there. The next one is the Hydras. The Hydras, I don't know if I just got lucky or if the Hydras actually proved that they can be effective in some matchups in this game. The fact I survived that cannonball shot is just luck. However, him rolling to he rolled really poorly to wound me with all his units, so I didn't take too many wounds, which means I get more attacks. So the Hydras actually get a chance to shine in this game. I'm not putting too much stock into it, but I will take a morale boost for the Hydras in this game. Also, another thing of note is my range capabilities in this game. Granted, I don't have much range, but all my crossbow bolts only did 2 wounds all game, and my bolt thrower did 1 wound all game. So it was pretty blah game for ranged weapons in this game. And just a final note on the Peg heroes, man, they really shine again in this game. Just they're so durable, and just having one stubborn and both of them strength 5, they all have 1-up saves. It's just so nice to have. It creates so many problems. And once again, what are the lead belchers supposed to do? They know their target probably should be the Executioners, but are you really going to let these Peg heroes dictate the flow of the game? And they do. And if you don't shoot at the Pegmasters is going to get into your Iron Guts. You don't get to stand and shoot because you're slow to fire, because you're trying to reload these giant cannon barrels and all this stuff. So the Peg heroes really crippled the whole one thing they really needed. And with the Ogre magic, I mean, besides the Maw, which is not too reliable, especially against Dark Elves. What are you supposed to do as far as taking out enemies at range? You know, the lead belchers were his answers to the executioners, but there was too many other targets for the lead belchers to go after. So victory to the Dark Elves. Thank you everybody for staying tuned.